It's a AA-DHD YouTube strategy group meeting number 23. The minutes from group meeting 23. So it occurs to me that I never really properly introduced the members of the group to my channel. And so I thought I'm going to take the time for the next few videos to talk about my guys. So we're going to start with Gil today. Then we're going to go Luch next week. And then we're going to go Clark after that. And we're going to wind up with Wyrick in 4 weeks. So I'm not interviewing them. I did what I had to do to prepare to basically provide this narrative biography that I'm going to kind of read through here. And it's just going to be just a deeper reintroduction. I've used their names and I've certainly mentioned them and their channels and some of their endeavors and conundrums. Conundra, I think. Conundry. So yeah, we've discussed some of their conundry and some of their plans. We've heard from Luch, right? We've talked about Gil and his day-old sushi fetish or whatever that is. Clark's unboxing apprenticeship, right? Still working on that. And Wyrick and his whole grammar party situation and his grammar jams now. So I'm going to formally introduce each of these guys to you over the next month. And this is the first of those videos. I call it a Lil Gil. It's just a little bit about Gil. That's all. So let's see how this goes. If you guys have any questions, certainly feel free to post a comment. All right, let's get into it. We'll start with his name. His name is Gil Galad. I'm not going to give his last name. That's his middle name. I'm not going to dox the guy. So Gil Galad. GG, sometimes for short. And he is the son of a mother who was a huge Tolkien. In fact, she's a Tolkien hardcore lore master. You ever heard of that? I never heard of that. I mean, she won contests about it. So what's a Tolkien hardcore lore master? Well, Gil's mom grew up right around the time J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings trilogy was getting published. So she read him in her like junior high school or high school years and just was charmed, as a whole generation was, right? And since I've been charmed, right? I was charmed when I was about her age, maybe a little younger when I read him for the first time. And she just fell in love with it. And back in the day, this is going to be in the 50s or something. There was no internet. There were no like groupies. There was no fan fiction, things like this type of stuff. So she was one of the first early pioneers, but just super devoted to the literature and the lore, because that's all there really was. So if you were really into the Lord of the Rings and Middle-earth, your only outlet, you had no choice but to become a lore master. And ultimately, that turned into a thing. So let me do a quick excursion into Tolkien hardcore lore mastery. All right, Tolkien hardcore lore masters. What is it? What are they? Basically, they're what you might call super Tolkien nerds. There's a whole bunch of these people back in the 50s and 60s. Some of these people went hardcore, which basically means you joined a kind of Tolkien fight club league, right? Certainly more fight club than spelling bee, anyway. And you competed with other Tolkien hardcore lore masters about Tolkien's Middle-earth and the story lore that you gleaned from the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. The Silmarillion wasn't published until the late 70s, and so all you had was the original trilogy and the Hobbit. And these hardcore Tolkien lore masters would have contests, I guess, regularly. And apparently there was a lot of betting going on. And the prize money for these contests was pretty outlandish. And Gil's mom, Georgette, raked it in. She was awesome at it. She was a champ. So, yeah, it was a real thing. Kind of crazy. Anyway, that's what the hardcore lore master was. I guess there's just regular Tolkien lore masters who didn't compete. Maybe they wrote articles, circulated around. I mean, there was no internet back in the 50s and 60s. There wasn't any of that. So if you were into Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings, Middle-earth, in the 50s and 60s, all you had was your brain, your pen and paper, and time on your hands, right? So gradually these communities coalesced and hardcore became a thing. Competitions, betting, money, prestige, all kinds of stuff. So that's what that was all about. And she won a lot of money winning these contests. I don't know if they have them anymore. Maybe they're not the same. Anyway, that's Gil's mom, and she named him Galad after the Elven King, right? Right? We know from the Second Age. And basically instilled in Gil her absolute love for all things Tolkien. And that's the context within which Gil was born and raised. By his mother primarily. His father, I don't even know his name. He was, they never married. He was in and out of Gil's life, mostly out. He was a spiritual vagabond, trying to follow his bliss, I guess, Joseph Campbell style. Maybe that's where Gil gets his spiritual curiosity. But we know where he gets his Tolkien curiosity. And yeah, that's the one half of the channel. Anyhow, what else we got here? So Gil was born in Colorado, and he moved to New Jersey later on. Yeah. Okay, well then I guess that's Gil's childhood. So later in life, after Gil became an adult, he moved to New Jersey. And that's where he came across his spiritual guide, the Guru Krishnamurti, who introduced him to the non-dual teachings in the Hindu tradition, of which Tantra is a well-known orientation, right? School, I guess. And that's how we get Gil's channel, Tolkien and Tantra. So now Gil runs a bookstore in town. He also, I should say, he runs a bookstore for his 9 to 5. That's called Tolkien and Tantra. That's where he gets his channel name from. But the Tolkien and Tantra bookstore, which you guessed it, sells Tolkien stuff and other high fantasy. Anything Tolkien you want, calendars, bookmarks, right? Any kind of kitschy stuff, lamps, bookends, silverware, plates, posters, t-shirts, all Tolkien memorabilia, and then a bunch of Tantra, non-dual spiritual stuff, books mostly. That's what goes on in his bookstore in town. I don't think it makes that much money. I mean, there's only so many Tolkien and Tantra fans in our small town, but he doesn't really need the money, turns out, because his mom's Lore Master contest winnings were quite substantial. He inherited quite a sum. It's almost like the bookstore is just another hobby, like YouTube is for him. Other things that Gil wanted me to mention, I guess he just doesn't want people to get some sort of a wrong idea about him. So here we go. First of all, he wanted it to be known that you can consider him a first age snob. He says, but at least he's not a third age pleb or a second age stooge. His ultimate goal for the channel is to somehow meld Tolkien characters into, I don't know if stories are right, but more like maybe aphorisms or like spiritual truths. So like bring in Galadriel. That's the kind of thing he's trying to do with the channel. So take his knowledge of the Tolkien universe, take the characters from it, and use them maybe like fables or whatever to teach non-dual wisdom, I guess. I don't know exactly how. I'm not sure that he does, which is why he calls it an aspiration. But there we go. So that's a Lil Gil, right? I hope you enjoyed just a quick little insight into one of our group members, one of our favorites. They're all our favorites. We love them all. But that one's Gil. Gil Galad. All right, YouTube. We'll see you next week when we do a deeper dive into Carlucci, the Luch. Yeah, all there really was back in the 50s and 60s was the lore. But there wasn't a lot of YouTube channels back then that had like Tolkien Middle-earth lore channels, right? What's a fan to do? Yeah, that's whatever. Good enough.